5 easy to grow vegetables you can grow at home. Growing your own vegetables is both fun and rewarding, and it's not a difficult thing to do. No matter how much space, time or money you have, you can easily put a few seeds in some soil, sprinkle them with water, and away you go. In this course I'm going to go through 5 vegetables, well technically 4 vegetables and 1 fruit, and show you how simple it is to grow your own lettuces, radishes, peas, tomatoes and carrots. I'll also include some hints and tips to help you on your way. Lettuces. Did you know that lettuces actually belong to the daisy family? There are many different varieties of this salad leaf that you can grow pretty easily, even if you know nothing about gardening. There are leaf lettuces or loose leaf lettuces, those that don't produce any sort of head, and then there's lettuces such as icebergs and romaine, which are also known as hearting lettuces. You can also grow salad leaves that can be picked while young and tender. If you pick the right varieties of lettuces, then you can have delicious leaves to eat almost the entire year. The head lettuces or hearting lettuces include varieties such as butterhead, cos and crisphead. The butterhead lettuces mature very quickly and they can tolerate poor growing conditions, so they are ideal for the complete beginner. They look a bit looser in their appearance and the leaves are slightly open. Cos lettuces grow more upright and have an oblong head. Romaine lettuces are a type of cos lettuce. The crisphead lettuces, which include icebergs, have curled and crisped leaves. Sowing. If you choose to grow butterhead or cos lettuces, you can sow them straight outside as soon as the last frosts have gone. Rather than planting all your lettuce seeds in one go, it's a good idea to do successive planting. This means you'll sow a few seeds, leave them to grow for a couple of weeks, then sow a few more, leave them to grow, sow a few more seeds, and so on and so on. This way you'll have plenty of fresh lettuce leaves throughout the year. If you grow loose leaf lettuces, it's a good idea to start them indoors or in a greenhouse at around the same time as the butterhead lettuces, and then transplant them outdoors once the weather is a bit warmer. Seedlings that have been raised indoors will need hardening off slightly, so move the seed tray outside a few hours each day for about a week, gradually increasing the time spent outside. Before you sow any seeds, if you're sowing straight into the ground, you'll need to prepare the soil first. Break up the soil as much as you can, ensuring there are no big lumps, and then mix in a lot of compost to give your lettuces the best food to grow. You might have heard of something called bolting in lettuces. This means the lettuce has grown a flower and has made seeds. You don't want this to happen because once the lettuce has bolted, its leaves become very bitter to taste. There are lots of reasons why lettuces might bolt, but by mixing in plenty of compost, it can help to prevent this from happening. Once you've prepared the soil, make a 1 cm deep trench in which to put the seeds. I find it's handy to get a bamboo cane and press it lengthways down into the ground. This gives a big enough trench for the lettuce leaves to germinate. Don't worry too much about spacing the seeds out at this stage. Firstly, not all the seeds will germinate, and secondly, we'll be thinning them out a bit more once they've started to grow. So just sprinkle the seeds in a fine line along the trench, then cover the seeds very thinly with the soil and water them. Don't put too much soil on top of the seeds, as lettuce seeds tend to germinate better if they have some light reaching them. In fact, if you can get away with not covering them, for example if you have netting on top of them to stop the birds from finding them, then you can leave the seeds sitting on top of the soil. If you're having more than one row of lettuce leaves, then leave about 30 centimeters in between each row. One little tip for sowing is that lettuce seeds don't like to be too warm for germination, so it's best to sow them in the evenings and water them with cold water. If it's summer, then provide some shade to keep the temperatures down. Once the seedlings are big enough to handle, you can start thinning them out. What this means is you can take some of the seedlings out of the ground so that there is about a 10 cm gap between each seedling. The seedlings that you do remove can be just moved to another row or even just eaten in a salad. By thinning your lettuces, you're giving the other seedlings room to grow. You can add a new short row every couple of weeks to ensure a continuous crop of lettuces. You can continue to sow lettuces from late March, even early February if you're growing indoors in seed trays, all the way through to late July. And you'll get lettuce crops throughout the summer and the autumn. If you want winter lettuce, then you need to sow in early August and then cover them either with a cloche or a propagation tunnel in late September. This will then give you an early winter crop. Instead of growing lettuces straight into the ground, you could grow them in pots or even seed modular trays. If you want a single head of lettuces that you can cut when mature, then sow one seed per modular tray. If you want lettuce leaves that can be cut a few off and then come back again later for more, then sow 5 or 6 seeds per modular tray, as this will give you plenty of young leaves. Another tip if you're a bit short of space is to sow and grow lettuces in grow bags as you would tomatoes. Don't ever let the soil get too dry, because dry soil is a surefire way of getting your lettuces to bolt. Water often and put a thick layer of mulch around the base of your lettuce to seal the moisture into the soil. Harvesting. If you're growing loose leaf lettuces, then you can start picking the baby leaves at around 6 weeks. It's best to pick your leaves early in the morning when they're at their juiciest. If you leave it until later in the day, you might find that the leaves are a bit dehydrated in the sun. I find a 6 AM harvest is the best, but I'm always up early. The earlier the harvest, the longer the leaves will store in a fridge because they'll be full of moisture. But as long as you pick them in the morning before the sun has started to warm them up, then they'll be just fine. You should be able to keep a 6 AM harvest lettuce for about a week in the fridge, but a midday harvest lettuce won't last more than a day. If you're growing the head or hearting lettuces, you can harvest them generally around 10 weeks, although the seed packet will tell you the best harvesting time for that variety you're growing. Don't forget, the harvesting time for each sowing will be the same. That's why I recommend only sowing in short rows. Butterhead and crisphead lettuces are harvested by cutting the whole head at the base of the plant. Loose leaf varieties can be harvested a number of times. Simply remove the outside leaves of the plant and the centre will continue to produce new leaves for about 2 or 3 more cuts. Problems. The main 2 problems with growing lettuces is bolting and pests. As long as you add plenty of compost to begin with and water a lot whilst they are growing, your lettuces shouldn't bolt. As for pests, slugs and snails do love lettuce leaves, so adding sharp grit around the lettuces can discourage them. Additionally, you can lay copper impregnated fabric around the plants, as slugs and snails don't like to touch copper. Other pests include aphids, which can quickly cover the lettuce plant. Whilst the aphids aren't bad for you, they are a little unappetising, but they can just be washed off the plants. However, growing dill next to your lettuces does sometimes seem to stop aphids from coming near your lettuce. Dill is like a magnet to aphids, so they'll head to the dill before attacking your lettuces. Additionally, dill flowers are a magnet to ladybirds, who just love to eat aphids, so problem solved.